people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Bumgarner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's lightweight division, Carolyn Dubois, is once again shouting across the street from behind the fence saying, "Geez, them belts are looking nice and shiny. Keep them clean for me, will ya?" To which Terry Harper, newly crowned WBO 3-division champion Terry Harper, responded, "Make sure it's a good offer." Carolyn replied by saying, "You bet. But don't go pricing yourself out. Your heart's still in this, right?" More than ever, said the newly crowned 3-division champion. Once again, Carolyn is being selective about what matchroom fighter she wants to fight. She can shout across the street at Rhiannon Dixon, and she can shout across the street at Terry Harper, but she don't keep that same energy for the newly crowned IBF champion, Beatriz Ferreira, who became a champion before Terry. How about that? Seems to me that what Carolyn Dubois is looking for is the low-hanging fruit, in a manner of speaking. When she was pursuing a Rhiannon Dixon fight, and now that she's pursuing a Terry Harper fight, what the both of those fighters have in common is they don't have the same amateur background that Carolyn has. Now, Terry is a lot more seasoned and experienced in the paid ranks, and she would be a big scalp, a credible scalp for Carolyn Dubois, but you can see what her logic is, her methodology. She doesn't want to fight another Olympian like herself. Terry Harper became WBO champion by beating Rhiannon Dixon for what was Rhiannon's WBO title. That was a very important victory for Terry. I think I saw her say that it's a career best win for her, and that surprised me.
There was a lot made from kind of the loss to Sandy Ryan heading into this fight. I mean, despite the fact you only lost twice, a lot of female fighters have lost way more than that and then achieved world titles after. Did that make the win even more sweeter with a lot of people kind of overly bringing that fight into this one?
I'd say so, yeah. And it were mainly for myself. I think after the Sandy Ryan fight, I really was questioning if I've got as far as I can with boxing, and I said it in a couple of my interviews. I thought, is it time for me to hang my gloves up and walk away? If I don't get the results I want on Saturday night, have I done everything that I can? And I just knew deep down I've got a lot more to give to the sport, and it's been refreshing to get Paul Duros in on camp, and it's gave me that hunger and the love back for the sport. So like even now, even though like I'm excited for my holiday, I'm buzzing to be getting back in the gym, whereas before I just wanted to go off and completely shut off from boxing, whereas now I'm itching to get back in and catch up with Andrew and see what the plan is. And yeah, it's a nice feeling to have the excitement and the love back.
Not Eva Wahlstrom for the WBC at 130 pounds and not Hannah Rankin for the WBA at 154. Terry identified Rhiannon. The thing is that she wasn't counted out before. In those fights with those fighters, those champions, going in, Terry Harper was given decent odds to win those fights, where in this fight, it was almost like what remained of her career was on the line. That if she loses to Rhiannon, it might be time to pack it in. It might be time to hang them up. So this one meant more. It was of particular importance, significance. And now that she's WBO champion, she's in Carolyn Dubois' crosshairs. But for going over to Boxer and fighting Carolyn over there, well, you might as well try to unify titles with Beatriz Ferreira over here. Carolyn doesn't have anything to offer Terry Harper. It wouldn't be an opportunity for Terry. It would be an opportunity for Carolyn. So for doing that, why wouldn't you fight Beatriz Ferreira? At least she's got a title you can win. I'm a big fan of Terry, and I have been for years, since before she signed the Matchroom. But I don't have any illusions about what would happen if she fought either Carolyn or Beatrice. Being honest, I think they both beat her. So if you're gonna roll the dice in the fight that gets you the most. And you don't win anything fighting Carolyn, but you could win a new alphabet title if you fight Beatrice. Food for thought. There is another fight at the weight that I think is a more winnable fight than those aforementioned fights, and there might be a full-fledged alphabet title on the line. Another one, the WBA title. I'm talking about a fight with Canada's own Jessica Kamara. Jessica currently has the gold version of the WBA title at this weight. Katie Taylor still has the full one, but Katie's up there at 140, and she's gonna be boxing Amanda Serrano for the second time next month. It's conceivable that sometime between now and then, Katie might vacate the WBA title, Jessica might be elevated to full champion, and when she is, Terry can fight her. Terry can unify titles with her. And I would give Terry Harper very good odds in that fight. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't have to be all about Carolyn Dubois. It doesn't have to be all about Beatrice Ferreira. Terry can go in another direction, at least momentarily, to extend her reign and put further distance between herself and her loss to Sandy Ryan. There are other fights to be made besides those two. In men's featherweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, the WBC have now made Ray Vargas the WBC featherweight champion in recess and upgraded Brandon Figueroa from interim to full WBC world champion ahead of his reported rematch with Stephen Fulton on the Gervonta Davis-Lamont Roach undercard on December 14th in Houston. Now, why specifically Ray Vargas has been relegated to a champion in recess, I don't know. Is he ill? Is he injured? Is he otherwise unable to fight? Satisfy his mandatory? And Brandon Figueroa, why did the WBC make that decision? Why didn't they just strip him? Because there is a difference between being stripped of a title and being labeled a champion in recess. As a champion in recess, you do have the privilege of coming back and challenging for the title straight away as a champion in recess, whereas if you're stripped of a title, you're just stripped. There's no bells and whistles, no special privileges. You're just stripped. Why did the WBC afford Ray Vargas this privilege? We don't know. I heard about this a little over a week ago. There was a blurb via Brandon Figueroa's Instagram stories. He had insinuated he was elevated to full champion, and now he is. I suppose this works out better for Stephen Fulton than the original arrangement. I suppose it's better because Stephen foregoing a Nick Ball fight and a chance to win the WBA title from him to run it back with Brandon. Brandon wasn't a champion at the time, Stephen Fulton was made the mandatory challenger for Nick Ball's WBA title. But we found out early on, he's not going to go after Nick Ball, he's not going to fight him, he's going to fight Brandon again. Except at the time, Brandon wasn't a champion. All he had was an interim title. Now, he's got the full one. And because he does, Stephen is getting another crack at the apple, just at a different title. The WBC instead of the WBA, though. It's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter because I don't think Stephen is going to win. He got lucky in the first Brandon Figueroa fight at 122. I don't think he's going to have that luck at 126. This weight favors Brandon Figueroa a lot more than it favors Stephen. Stephen was not a hard puncher at 122. There is no power to carry up to 126. For Brandon, it's different. For a guy with the physical dimensions of a Brandon Figueroa, boiling down to 122, it may have an effect on your power and your performance, so that when you get to 126 and you feel a bit better, a bit stronger, you've got power to carry. It's a better weight for Brandon than it is for Stephen. Not actually a fan of Brandon Figueroa's boxing or his brand of pressure fighting because he's a pressure fighter, but a very low-level pressure fighter. Almost no punch picking, it's all arm punches that aren't defensible. I'm not a fan. He's not accurate, he's not a sharp puncher, but he is a pressure fighter. He is a pressure guy, and Stephen Fulton could barely deal with that pressure at 122. I don't think he's going to be able to deal with it at 126. I think this time Brandon's going to win. He's going to keep his WBC title. But I'll tell you that there's no real money to make staying where he is. There's no real money to make on the PBC side of things. There are 3 other champions at this weight. Rafael Espinoza, Angelo Leo, and Nick Ball. Rafael and Angelo are on the top-ranked side of things. Nick Ball's across the pond at Queensbury. You ain't gonna make but so much money remaining an island on PBC Island. You ain't gonna make but so much money just defending your title against what guys the PBC musters up for you. The real money is in unifying, whether it's with Rafael or Angelo or Nick. Beyond the Stephen Fulton rematch that no one was asking for, you have to ask yourself, what is Brandon Figueroa gonna do? Is he gonna stay over there, isolate himself from the rest of the division, and skip out on the opportunity to make real money? He's got the WBC title, the green belt. A lot of guys like that belt. That's gotta be worth something. The PBC isn't all that invested in the featherweight division and featherweight action outside of the one or two guys they've got there. You stay there, they ain't gonna have you doing a whole lot. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, Brandon's going to be defending his WBC title, his full title, for the first time against former champion Stephen Fulton. And this time, I'm going with Brandon to win. The first time I went with Stephen, this time I'm picking Brandon. And finally, ahead of tomorrow night's junior middleweight title fight, Tim Tszyu is focused on Bakhram and not the kid without a lollipop, Turki Alalshikh. Tim Tszyu has vowed to remain independent and to continue resisting the overtures of the General Entertainment Authority and Turki Alalshikh. The Australian who on Saturday challenges Bakhram for the Russians' IBF junior middleweight title previously angered the chairman of the GEA, whose frustration with Tszyu led to him condescendingly saying, "I will not work with Tim Tszyu. Let him do his way. He doesn't understand." Tszyu's comfort in his relationships with promoters PBC and No Limit, complemented by the size of his support in his home country, have contributed to him resisting the temptation to pursue positions on extravagant promotions overseen by the GEA. A victory this weekend at the Caribe Royale in Orlando, Florida, would represent the start of his second reign as a world champion, and therefore enhance his influence and his ability to continue steering his career in his own way. I just sort of laughed at Alalshikh, the 29-year-old told Boxing Scene. It kind of felt like a young kid that ain't got a lollipop. Oh well, you just ignore it. I've got a good team behind me, and I'm happy with everything. I don't need to depend on anyone else, thinking there's going to be some god and savior of boxing who's going to come in and fix everything, you know? This is a different tune than his longtime handler George Rose was singing. Remember what we talked about in my previous video on how George Rose feels that winning the IBF title this weekend will be a segue to a Terence Crawford fight and a lot of money. Big money. That's what George had to say about it. Whereas Tim doesn't want to rely on Turkey for big money. It seems he wants to create revenue of his own the organic way. Irrespective of which one of these two men you agree with, what you have to agree is that they don't seem to be on the same page. George wants to work with Turkey, whereas Tim can do without. I think part of it is being able to create your own revenue and not be dependent on others and not have to bow down, be loyal to who supported you from the start. Money, I guess. That's the only reason to be like that. We're in the sport for a short period of time, so whatever opportunity people are getting there, they're jumping on it. And the opportunity that I got is currently here with PBC and No Limit, but you're not making with PBC and No Limit what you could be making with Turkey. See, I would agree with Tim's methodology if he would have sold a bunch of pay-per-views with Sebastian Fundora, or if he were fighting in front of a large crowd this weekend. I heard the tickets for this weekend's fight are going for as low as $1. The ends have to justify the means. And if they did, I wouldn't argue with Tim's methodology, but it seems to me that he's shortchanging himself doing what he's doing, fighting at the Armory in Minneapolis and that pay-per-view with Sebastian Fundora in Vegas that you could have had in front of a larger crowd in Australia, where you would have got the consideration you didn't get in Vegas. And now you're fighting Bakhram Murtazaliev in Florida. The people in Florida, they don't know him any more than they know you. Tszyu's commitment to the path he's following has contributed to plans for him to relocate from Sydney to Vegas because of the sparring and other opportunities to progress his career the move would present. He celebrated his father, Kostya, the retired junior welterweight Hall of Fame inductee, is in Orlando to witness one of his fights for the first time since his professional debut in 2016. Unlike then, Tim doesn't expect him to attempt to guide him through Saturday's fight against Murtazaliev. I think he's more than ready, Tszyu said. He's more excited. It came from him. I've never invited anyone. I've never given anyone the expectation I want them there besides my coach. I think another world title, a big opportunity, is why he wanted to be here. It could be because I lost to Sebastian Fundora in my last fight. I went to Thailand recently with him, but my brother Nikita hasn't seen him in 11 years. It's unbelievable, him being here. It's a good feeling. I think Tim is being headstrong. I think he's being bullheaded. You say that you don't want to grow dependent on someone else for big paydays. You want to create revenue of your own, and that sounds good, but bigger names than you are fighting in Riyadh season. Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. Those guys aren't dependent on Turkey per se. They can fight in their own neck of the woods and generate their own money all on their own. They're doing so because Turkey's making the biggest of the big fights possible. And what's wrong with that? For fantastic money, the best money in the sport right now. So when Tim turns his nose up at the idea that he should work with him, I don't like that. He's good enough for Artur Beterbiev. He's good enough for Dmitry Bivol, but he's not good enough for you? He's good enough for Daniel Dubois. He's good enough for Anthony Joshua. He's good enough for Tyson Fury. He's good enough for Alexander Usyk, but for you he's no good. Did somebody here in America get it in your head that the only reason those guys are working with Turkey is because they can't generate money of their own? Because that's what it feels like. That's what it sounds like. Tim has done very well for himself in his neck of the woods, but make no mistake, all those aforementioned fighters have made more money than Tim. All of them. Before they started dealing with Turkey, they were making more money than Tim. So don't get it in your head that they're depending on Turkey. No. I just don't like the attitude that I'm seeing from Tim. Because if we are to get a Tim Tszyu versus Terence Crawford fight, for example, for Terence's WBA and Tim's potential IBF, you're gonna have to work with Turkey. PBC ain't got no goddamn money. Turkey does. He can satisfy Terence's financial demands and yours. So what's the problem? I just don't understand how George Rose, who's been handling Tim Tszyu's career for years, can be so open to working with Turkey where Tim sounds so closed off. He must have it in his head he's gonna make buku dollars in America when America's not what it used to be. Does he not realize that? Being a foreigner and going somewhere new, you're not hip to what's really going on right away. You don't know yet. Because everything feels new to you and you're stuck on the novelties. Foregoing a working relationship with Turki Alalshikh to try to make it in America when so many American fighters don't make it in America. It's not smart.